A very good evening, everyone. I am Calvi Rana from Logistics Insider, and I welcome you all to this year's first freewheeling solution oriented session on the topic ensuring shipment security in global supply chains, organized by Logistics Insiders and powered by ABLOY. Now, globalization has opened an opportunity for local competition to grow bigger in the international market. Manufacturers are now able to move large quantity of shipments from one continent to another by leveraging the ever-growing and complex supply chain networks. Now, while shipping across the globe has become a piece of cake, warehouse theft, inventory pilferage, missing cargo trailers, and truck hijacks are a few of the security issues that constantly stress the manufacturers as well as the supply chains. But how can one ensure shipment security in the global and complex supply chain? Now, to answer just that, today we have two excellent speakers with us who will brainstorm on the challenges in shipment security for cross border shipments, the methods to ensure undisrupted shipment security in the global marketplace, tech that can help control your shipment, and much more. Without any further ado, I would now like to call upon our very first guest for today, Mr. Baxi Samyak Sinha, National Sales Manager, ABLOY, India. Mr. Sinha is responsible for driving business development and sales for ABLOY in the SAARC region. Working in electronic and security industry for more than 12 years, he has dealt with different sectors and verticals, transportation and logistics being one of them. Through these years of close association with the industry, Mr. Sinha understands what it takes to achieve a tranquil operation and hence have been driving the need for security upgrades and technology for more safe and secure operations. Welcome to the show, Mr. Sinha.
Well, thank you, Karvi, and I am glad to be here talking on logistics security as one of the very important aspects when we talk of logistics and cargo handling on a broader perspective. So, well, good evening to everyone who's joined in, and we'll soon be discussing about how the entire logistic vertical works and what are the threats and how do we overcome those threats is something that we'll see.
We're happy to have you here with us, Mr. Sinha.
So, yeah.
Now, calling upon our second guest for today, I would like to welcome Mr. Rajesh Neelakanta, Executive Director and CEO, BVC Logistics. With over 30 years of experience across multiple verticals, Mr. Neelakanta has ably led BVC Logistics with his robust leadership skills. His areas of expertise include international transportation, custom brokerage services, contract logistics, and domestic transportation, including e commerce logistics. Mr. Nilakanta also holds the title of Independent Director at ProConnect Supply Chain Solution Limited, Independent Director at Raj Protem Supply Chain Solutions Limited, Associate Member of the National Center of Cold Chain Development, Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India, among many others. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Karvi. Thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to all our friends on this event. Wishing you all happy Lori, happy Pongal, happy Sankranti, happy Bihu, and I guess we have another about 21 states celebrating today as the opening of the new season. Thank you very much. And
Thank
as
you.
Karvi mentioned, and as Mr. Sinha suggested, that the day's subject of shipment security in global supply chains. This is a very, very key element of business today. And I'm sure, you will be enriched. We will be enriching ourselves by interacting with you all. And I definitely would love to share some of my real life experiences with the shipment security aspects in logistics over the last 30 plus years. Thank you very much, and I'll await
Yeah,
your further advice on to the next steps in the event.
uh,
Thank you.
yes, sir. I'm sure our audience is also waiting eagerly to hear both our experts speak about shipment security. And now, before I hand over the baton to both of you, I would just like to inform our audience that both our expert speakers will be taking your comments on shipment security, your questions on shipment security. So, drop in any query and questions that you would like our experts to answer in the comment section. Now, with this, Mr. Neelakanta, you can please take over, and I look forward to a very exciting and thought provoking session from you guys.
Thank you, Gavi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, once again, good afternoon. I presently represent BVC Logistics, a company which is the oldest in the high secure transportation and logistics services business for precious cargo in India and the world over. So the very nature of merchandise that BVC does handle on behalf of the gems and jewelry industry in India, the diamonds, the precious metals, the works of art, shipments, the high street luxury brand goods that we handle, etc. They all deserve the highest levels of security, both in terms of physical and in terms of data. While I would claim expertise in terms of the tactical and the physical aspects of the security, I'm sure my friend Samyak would be able to walk you through the tech part of it. So I would not delve too much into that because that's not too much of my core strength, I would say. One thing about physical security is, this is something that has been going on for ages. I mean, we have always had security guards, popularly known as darbans or, watchman, etc. It is interpreted differently in different industries. I would restrict our talk to our own industry. In the supply chain logistics business, basically the number of stakeholders that we have in our trade are one too many. You have regulatory stakeholders, you have customers who are the key stakeholders, who are our own employees, then we have our service provider employees, etc. So it's a very diverse set of stakeholders that we have, and instilling the sense or same level of sense of security in all these stakeholders is a Herculean task. Believe you me, I'm sure all my friends in the 3PL business, in the contract logistics business would vouch for this, because security, understanding of security is different for different people. But as a business and as a service provider, if I have to talk about from a service provider's perspective, providing absolute security, foolproof security to the merchandise that is entrusted to us as custodians by our customers, as custodians by the regulatory authorities while it is in the process of getting customs cleared, etc., or while in transit from one location to another, be it domestically, be it internationally, should be the credo for all logistics businesses. Likewise, on the customer side as well, for a manufacturer, the product is still not sold till it is reached to the market and there is a realization of money. So the security aspects are of utmost importance right from the word go, where the raw material procurement process is concerned. There again, you have security aspects that one needs to consider. Then you have your manufacturing processes, where within the known defined premises, I'm sure one has the wherewithal to control. But what is not controllable or what is left to chance is when the shipment is out on the streets, whether it is being trucked down from city A to city B, whether it is flown from one city to another in the same country or another country, or even if it is by ocean. So the various aspects that one considers, one would like to consider in this is, how am I gullible? How breakable is my system? So processes are of utmost importance here. We draw up an SOP for each activity of ours, which is a standard practice in most Indian businesses today. It was not so 20 years ago, believe you me. We used to have instances of trucks just vanishing off the face of the earth. I mean, there were. I mean, I would like to bring in a couple of anecdotes here. We were doing some shipments from India to Africa, and our merchandise was traveling in convoys of 11 trailers, 15 trailers, etc. And suddenly at the destination, you realize 3, 4 trailers are missing, and they're missing for days together. In a couple of cases, we found them after about 65, 66 days. Luckily, the merchandise was of no use for anybody. These were some engineering machine parts, etc. These were not having any street value, so we were lucky to get back. Similarly, there are consignments which move out domestically, I mean, quite recently, and I'm sure you keep reading about such things in the papers, that the items of high street value could be mobile phones, could be jewelry, etc., being waylaid en route and taken away. So it becomes very important of the organization which is handling it to be able to protect the merchandise that is in its care and custody from being taken away. So we use a lot of physical tools and equipment that are available. The vehicles are all GPS fitted. Then you have the portable RFID technology that we are using. But then not everyone can afford to use it, for the simple reason that the unit costs of these modern day tech equipments, since they have not reached a scale, they are not really affordable in all cases. But where it is important, it is essentially to be put in. I would want to take a pause here and perhaps blend in Samyak's tech part of it here, if that makes some sense, going forward to continue this discussion. Samyak, would you like to add something here, please?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Neelakanta. I think you have very nicely summarized as to what we are looking at in terms of when we talk about shipment security. So, as you started off, I would say that when it comes to the security part, we broadly categorize security into two different areas. One, of course, is the physical security, which we understand what a physical threat is. This is something which has been a sort of a legacy, a practice that we've been into for a long, long time, ever since the logistics business started. Since then, physical threats have been a part of the entire supply chain scenario. Second, of course, is now when we talk about a lot of uh, technology being integrated into security with Internet of Things and a lot of data traveling across from one point to other. Then obviously the internet and cyber threats are again something which has become very commonplace. Just to mention, we heard something like a ransomware cyber attack very recently. That's again a part of the entire process where a lot of software is being used, and the supply chain is now for a lot of efficiency is largely dependent on these softwares, and we have systems in place that make working of it more efficient. But similarly, we also have such cyber and internet threats which are there. So physical threats, of course, we would understand that physical threats to a supply chain security includes more traditional means of harm, such as theft, sabotage, piracy, hijackings. So now these type of threats are something which can come both from an internal or an external source. When I talk about an internal source, of course, there would be employees or maybe contractors or somebody else from within the group, who's not really authorized to access the shipment. Those can be people who could be the internal sources. External sources, of course, could be people from outside who are trying to get into the shipment and cause a damage or create a scenario of hijacking or something else. So basically, when we are talking about securing, it's more of a holistic approach where we discuss how to contain both the physical threat part of it, and of course, how do we contain the internet and cyber threats. Now, both become very important because largely now the entire supply chain system is being driven into, I would say, adapting a solution where it addresses most of these concerns. Obviously, when we talk about different regions, different nations, these threats somewhat differ. A case in point is when we were discussing, say, cargo security for South American market. We saw that a lot of cargo travels along with armed guards. Now, this is something which is still prevalent in the South American market. So, whenever you have a high value cargo being transported, it normally is accompanied by armed guards because there's a lot of cases of hijacking that happens. Similarly, if I talk about the Indian subcontinent market, largely, it's the road transportation that gets affected, wherein we have seen a lot of cases of break-ins happening, a lot of cases of thefts happening, both from the internal and external sources. So, coming to the technology point of it, yes, I would say now how we adapt to it is something that the entire supply chain companies have started looking at it. Initially, to start with, when Mr. Neelakanta just mentioned that when things started about 15, 20 years ago, people were not really so focused on security as one of the primary areas of concern, because this was something which could have been handled by a man guard or an armed guard accompanying a truck, or maybe say a cargo container. But now again, that's where the efficiency part comes in, wherein because of the efficiency parameters, you also have less reliability on such human security mechanism. So obviously, a lot of companies, or most of the companies nowadays, are moving towards more technology oriented solution, where they can see a solution that can address both physical and cyber security. Now, coming from ABLOY, I would say that we have been fortunate to be part of the logistics industry. That ways, we've been working with the logistics companies for close to 10 years now, designing and developing solutions. Obviously, when I talk about technology, we the other thing that we need to keep in mind is technology is something which is ever evolving. So nobody can really say that, okay, technology is something which I can provide you a foolproof solution today, but will it work tomorrow and day after is something which is questionable. So we have to keep in mind that it's a system which has to change as the time changes, as the technology advances, as new technological upgradations come. The solution also needs to be upgraded. So based on that, yes, of course, a lot of stress now is being given on a digital change for supply chain security, where people are now looking at switching from the legacy processes. Like we used to have physical locks, or some sort of, I would say, uh, a standard, a very standard mechanism for GPS tracking as a vehicle tracking systems. Now, those are some of the legacy systems which are now giving way to more digital and technologically advanced solutions these days. Coming to the cybersecurity point of it, also we are looking at a lot of encryption happening now. There are different levels of encryption that we are talking about. We in a couple of years moved from a 128-bit to a 256-bit AES encryption. Now we have something called COS coming into picture. So there's a lot of encryption technologies that are coming into picture. There's a lot of tokenization happening. you know uh, File access monitors, alerts, data loss prevention. So all of these are some technologies which are being used nowadays to make sure that we get a holistic security solution in place for the logistics industry. I believe it's one industry that has been plagued by these challenges for far too long, and talking about addressing it as one standard solution that works for all is something is pretty much non-existent. So depending on what is the kind of shipment that we're talking about, what is the mode of shipment that we're talking about, the kind of cargo being carried, what is the we do a threat assessment, a risk assessment as to how much risk is associated to that kind of a cargo. Depending on all these factors, the entire solution parameter changes. So ABLOY that way is involved into doing a lot of customization and creating custom-made solutions for the supply chain companies. So I think Mr. Neelakanta would, if you would have any of your views on how you have seen this adaptation over the last few years. We're talking from the security perspective. How has the logistics industry moved from what it was 10 years ago, what it is now, and what is the kind of future risks that we are looking at right now?
Sure. Thanks, Samyak. And I mean, I certainly would like to answer your question or clarify on that. But I also see a question from our friend Bashar Ali, specifically asking for how do we ensure the security of shipments. I suppose it is how do we ensure in countries having
Yes.
specific circumstances like war. It's definitely a very thought-provoking question. This is a problem that most businesses would be going through. One is, of course, I mean, if I can split your question into two, Mr. Ali. One is on the storage part of the merchandise in security for security, and the transportation part of it. Under the storage part of it, of course, for quite a good number of years, for almost 2 decades or a little over 2 decades, we've been having a security audit protocol called TAPA. Technology Asset Planning and Agreement, which is quite a foolproof system. So there are different classes of security grades for warehouses that are assigned under the TAPA A, B, C. So the levels of security requirements, and that includes the construct of the very premises itself, plus the recruitment and staffing policies of each businesses, plus the equipment that is used, plus the frequency of shipments that are handled. All these are considered in, and there are various security protocols that are advised under these regimes. There is also, of course, surveillance, which is a common practice everywhere today. Not just warehouses, hotels, or even residential buildings, etc. And I know for a fact that there are quite a lot of domestic users as well in their residences in large metro cities, where the occupants generally are out of home through the day. So these are available. But the biggest challenge in any situation, let alone a situation where there is a war or internal strife in any country, the challenge is the security while in physical transit for the merchandise. As Samyak mentioned today, the technologies have evolved so much, and over the last 10 years, 10 years ago, you wouldn't get a lock with a biometric access. You wouldn't get a lock with an OTP kind of an arrangement. People would perhaps laugh if you're looking for something like that. But today, that's commonplace. Today, in fact, security has gone much beyond that as well. So one thing is, in transportation, the biggest mistake that most companies do is creating a pattern in their operation. That's one of the biggest practices that, for convenience, for ease of operation, for cost-effective operation, we stick to a routine. Once we draw up a network and we just want to follow that, so that I mean, we hope that nothing can go amiss. But that's where is the team or the people who are supposed to be ensuring the responsibility become a bit complacent if they do not change the routines, be it of the people who are deployed on any given route, whether it is the route itself. All these have to be considered. And of course, there are other technology parameters. Like my company also, we use this technology where we geofence the routes that we allow the vehicles to travel, with an allowance of, let's say, 20 meters, 25 meters on either side of the freeway or the highway. where the vehicle can deviate at the most. And there are also other technology aspects like engine immobilizers that are available today, where you can remotely cut off the engine from a central control room that companies like like ours, operates. So these are some of the avenues that are available, Mr. Ali, to mitigate the risks of transportation theft. But one very strong element is insider involvement in any of these activities. Now, that has to be taken care of, that has to be covered through training, through internal intelligence gathering amongst the staff, etc., which is a more of a detailed quasi intelligence kind of a role. So it always helps to have people who've had the background, maybe from the police services, maybe from the armed forces, etc. Just to share with you, we have very senior personnel from the services, both police, which is civil services, and military services, who are advising us on the security protocols that we need to follow. So that is something perhaps Mr. Ali would go to a great extent to mitigate the risk. But still, the chances of a situation of a theft or a hijacking of a vehicle is still not ruled out. So I hope this gives some insight, and any further assistance on this, I'm sure Logistics Insider team would be happy to support. And of course, we would also be involved in that. So coming back to the technology part of it, which Samyak so beautifully detailed. Yeah, about 10, 12, 15 years ago, the situation was far, far different. With the evolution of AI, with the evolution of ML, life has become easier in all aspects, and so has it in the security aspects for the logistics. The entire logistics business itself has gone through a sea change. I mean, who talked about quick commerce? Who talked about hyper local delivery systems? And who talked? These were all words that are of recent origin, and these were words of recent origin because these are services of recent origin. So it's a dynamic situation. It's an ever-changing situation, and technology is fortunately able to provide and walk step by step in step with the new aid services that are being introduced in the logistics industry. And this is impacting common life everywhere. It's just not in one small hamlet of India or Africa or South America. It is everywhere. Larger countries have larger problems. There's a different type of security threats that come in. In some cases, we have physical threat of securities that come in. Samyak?
Yeah. So I would actually, take one more question that I see here. Mr. Shaunik Goyal is asking which is the best or foolproof method for last delivery to the customers, OTP or government ID or something else. Now, to this, I would also include what you just concluded for Mr. Bashar Ali, a part of it, that when we're talking about technology as a method of security, we need to understand that technology by itself can do whatever is capable of as a solution that we can design. Now, it has to be backed up by certain SOPs. It has to be backed up by a certain level of what Mr. Neelakanta just said, that breaking of the pattern where people do not get into a very standard arrangements as such. So these are some of the on-ground situations that we need to integrate with the technology part of the solution. Now, coming to purely the technology or the advanced security solutions that we have, again, it's as I said, it's more of a holistic solution. We cannot look at any one of the solution as a standalone solution that serves all purposes. So when I talk about the standalone solutions, a lot of our customers come to us saying that, okay, why don't we have a CCTV camera which can capture everything? So to understand, basically there is a proactive security and there's a reactive security. Now, CCTV cameras, electronic access control, these are more of a reactive security systems, which can give you, a feedback, but cannot actually prevent a theft or maybe an incident from happening. So that is where the passive security also comes into picture, where we say that, yeah, it's more of a proactive security, where it can withstand to a certain level, the kind of break-ins or incidents that has to happen. Now, both of these go hand in hand. So, if we have to talk about one foolproof solution that works, well, there is no such solution. We've got to understand that every case for us is different, every customer is different, every region, every kind of operation is different. So there's a lot of customization that we do depending on what is the kind of requirement that we are looking at. uh, Say for example, asking whether an OTP works, or maybe some sort of a security credential works. Well, OTP may be a part of the convenient solution, where you can receive an OTP and engage, disengage some sort of a security system. But then we also need to understand that OTP generation, or receiving an OTP, is based on a network. So if you go out of a mobile network, you will not receive an OTP. So we need to have a backup for that as well, as to what happens if you are in a no network area, or there's certain sort of, say, communication failure, where you are not able to communicate to your vehicle, or to the personnel who's there. So these are certain cases which do exist. These are some real scenarios that do happen. So what we suggest is that you will have to look at security not only as one part of the solution. It is something wherein we have to integrate a lot of things from the security perspective, from a standard operating procedures. Even if we install a security system, no matter how advanced it is, there has to be an SOP defined on the usage, or on say, access to it. Remote monitoring and intervention is something which has picked up very fast recently, specifically for the reason that you're not dependent on the crew to do something. It's something which can be monitored, which can be controlled from a remote location, from your NOC, or from a central monitoring station, wherever you have your people sitting. Uh, Again, this is one of the areas that solve a lot of problem, but at the same time, it does not give you a very effective or a complete security solution. So we use a lot of different mechanisms. We use identification mechanisms. We use different types of credentials for different purposes. We use state of the art track and trace technology, as Mr. Neelakanta said, that GPS is something which is very common these days, where every vehicle, or every container, or every cargo packs, they have GPS chips inbuilt, or they have a vehicle tracking system through which we can track the movement of it. Similarly, advanced locking mechanisms, again, being a proactive security part of it, is also advised that a locking is something which can prevent things from happening, rather than giving you an alert after something has happened. So that again becomes a part of the entire system. Uh, what is more important is also, when we talk about an insider's hand into all of this, screening of employees, and thoroughly, with a focus on values to reduce the risk of internal threats. Now, this is something which has to be defined as a rule, as a protocol, as an SOP. We use a lot of contractual employees. We use a lot of contractual containers for movement. Now, the credibility is one part of it. The accountability becomes another. So who is accountable in terms of a security breach is something that we need to understand. Uh, as a standard inspection procedure, mobile technology applications, IoT devices, these are something which we have introduced, which we are using. But all of this together is something that creates, I would say, a robust security solution. Now, again, Coming from the technology perspective, this is something that we have designed today. Looking at a time span of say maybe another 5, 6, 7 years till when it can work fine. But from the user's perspective, we have to be prepared that after a certain point of time, these technologies would also need to be upgraded, depending on how the my threat assessment goes up. What are the new technologies that have come up? What are the newer ways of people breaking into these technologies? So technology is something which is adapting or changing very fast. Say case in point, if we talk about our computer processors, when we started off about 10 years ago, I think maybe say an 8 GB RAM or a 16 GB RAM, or even when we for if I go 10 years back, we were talking of RAMs or processing capabilities in terms of megabytes, not even a gigabyte. So every 2 years, we see that processing capability to double up. That's how fast the technology evolves. Similarly, when we talk about AI, we talk about machine learning, we talk about Internet of Things. Now, these are some things that have advanced very fast in the last couple of years. Say, if we have to look at a 5 year time span, uh, like 5 years ago, IoT was something which was just talked as a subject. Now, this is something which is a reality. So again, the entire security apparatus, the entire security scenario will change depending on the kind of technologies that come into that makes us more convenient and more secure for us to use and install. So that ways, if I say that okay, there's one foolproof solution that works for all, well, unfortunately, there's no one solution that works. But yes, integrating multiple solutions, customizing it as per the requirement is something that addresses the security challenge to a large extent. uh, Again, coming back to the same point, that it is something which is ever evolving, it's ever changing, so we will have to look at security upgradations, say in a time span of every 5 to 7 years. That is something which is I think a necessity given the fast pace of technology that's changing.
Thanks, Samyak. Samyak, I think there's an interesting comment by Ram Prasad Chatterjee who says we can facilitate in between checking, uh, uh,
Facility.
facilitate in between checking facility start to destination. Yeah, frankly, Ram Prasad, today's logistics is all about time sensitiveness. When we order something, we wanted it yesterday, actually. So that's how the growth of e-commerce has been possible, because e-commerce has been able to reach the merchandise to the consumers faster than the traditional way of doing business. So it may not be actually practical to have checkpoints in the route of a shipment. Most of the thefts happen on long distance travel, the vehicle thefts that can happen. But yes, your point is valid when it comes to shipments which are routed through transshipment points, where there is a change of mode of transport, or there is a change of the actual vehicle of carriage from first leg to the second leg, etc. And it definitely makes sense that we build in a physical scrutiny mechanism. It's not really a check, because you won't have enough time to actually check if the shipment is intact, it's there, etc. You do a cursory scrutiny of the shipment's physical attributes, whether if it is a sealed package, the seal is intact. If it is a locked box, whether the lock seems to be intact. You have all kinds of different seals now. You have plastic seals, you have metal seals, etc. So these would ensure continuity of the security of the shipment while it passes through different transshipment points. So, point taken, yes, it will help to some extent, but by and large, as Samyak also mentioned, that all these steps that we take, all these equipment, tools, gadgets that we use, the technology that we use, the due diligence that we do in terms of our recruitment, etc., to avoid insider involvement, etc. These all act as deterrents. They are, that's only a deterrent. Anyway, there's one point that Mr. Surendra Kumar has brought up. How does packaging make, would it make a difference? I would certainly, I agree with Mr. Kumar here that it does make a difference in the sense if the packaging is made as foolproof as possible. Uh, I would like to give an instance here of what we do. We introduced the concept of shipping jewelry in metal boxes in India way back in the early part of last decade. Till then, people used to send it in plastic boxes, etc. There used to be shipments getting delivered. There used to be shipments getting stolen, etc. But the moment we started putting boxes or requesting our customers to put their jewelry, the manufactured jewelry in metal boxes, and then seal those boxes, and then we started using an outer bag, which is a one-time tamper-proof seal. So the instances of theft dropped like crazy. I really can't give the percentages here, but it was an eye opener for the industry. And since then, there's been no looking back. So packaging does make it difficult. If the right packaging will definitely make it that much more difficult for any shipment to be pilfered while in transit, or while at the destination, or while at the gateway hubs or intermediary hubs, etc. Because, as I mentioned in the beginning of this talk, that there are multiple stakeholders, so you can't keep monitoring or policing every stage of the shipment because most of it is not in the control of a logistics provider or the owner of the cargo. So yes, packaging does make a difference to some extent. And I think Mr. Amit Kumar Ray has also made a mention here about Ram Prasad's point through barcode X-ray. Yeah, right, Amit. But the whole challenge is, as I said, time is of the greatest importance in today's logistics. So a shipment, when it is consigned to a logistics provider, in more cases than, or in most cases than not, it goes through a scanning mechanism. There's an X-ray scanning that is happening, and of course, barcoding is more to identify the shipment with the customer or with the owner of the package, etc. But physical scanning of the shipments do happen. Like you go to an airport, you put in your bag, it goes through a scanner. In some airports, you don't see the scanner because there is an inline scanning that has come in, and in other airports, smaller airports, you have to literally take it to the scanning machine, walk it through that, and then so those mechanisms are available. They can be at the origin location primarily, but not at every stage of transit in terms of surface transportation. There are other challenges that prevent you from doing that. Samyak, any comment on that?
Yeah, I just like to add one more thing to that point. When we're talking about barcodes and X-rays, we primarily use them as an efficient tools for inventory management. So, when it has to happen for an identification purpose, this works. Extra machines are again not something that would help a lot in terms of the security structure, because somebody who's sitting there at the X-ray cannot really define whether there's a security threat to that package, or there's something which is missing, or something which was already there. He's not aware of that. Similarly, barcodes are something which is more to identify a package. This both barcode and X-rays are something which have been introduced a long time back to more efficiently manage the entire supply chain process, where we can down on the time that otherwise be used by just so it does not add a lot of value in terms of securing the cargo as such. Identification, yes, absolutely. I mean, both barcode and X-ray can be used for identification purposes, and it just efficiently manages your supply chain systems to a large extent.
So by and large, gentlemen, I think I mean, has to be as cautious as possible in terms of the practices that we follow at our workplaces. The need to know information dissemination is again of a very critical point here, because if data is available, access to data is available to all and sundry in an organization, it doesn't actually serve any positive purpose, while it can lead to possible situations of theft and situations of sabotage, etc. So, to the extent possible, a need to know kind of a concept is brought in our workplaces, be it for storage, be it for transportation. That would be a good measure to prevent possible negative situations. Then practices like certification through various independent audit bodies in terms of our own practices, in terms of the physical nature of our warehouses, the vehicle constructs that we have. For instance, BBC operates a fleet of over 300 vehicles. Over 300 vehicles where these are truly fortified vehicles, so they become impregnable in the event of an attack. Not that we've ever had an attack, or it is easy for somebody to just bring in a carbine and start shooting. It's not possible in most situations today. But then preparedness is something that is a given. One cannot take it light. And like Gaurav is prompting me to share a couple of anecdotes. Yeah, as I mentioned, a couple of them already in the beginning of this. We had situations where we were running a convoy of missionaries to in Africa, from the east coast to the central part of Africa, which goes through multiple countries. We had one instance where we had about 11 uh, long trailers carrying engineering equipment and machinery. While most of the shipments reached, four of the trailers went missing. So nobody knew where they were. And these were times when we didn't have GPS so commonly available, or we didn't have any shipment trackers or RFIDs, or any of these gadgets and devices. So it was a plain old sleuthing activity that we had to resort to through the local police, of course. And after about 65, 66 days, we found these trailers deep in wooded areas. But then, as I said, luckily there was no street value for it, so we could recover it and deliver it to our customers. But there are situations where we have had losses. Like a very common thing, though I have not, frankly, handled those shipments, but there's a large cigarette manufacturing company which has had multiple instances of theft on one particular route in India. So people were wondering, every time there's a truck that goes, I mean, or there's a bunch of trucks that go through that route. About 30% of the trucks never used to reach the destination on time. They used to reach much later, but then half the merchandise was gone. So you understand, I mean, though it's a small thing as a cigarette, but then if half a truck of cigarette, multiple such cases happen, I mean, it's a few lakhs every time. So there was a mechanism that, I was involved in suggesting that mechanism. So they did that. So we started changing the routes of the vehicle, and changing the crew that used to man those vehicles for the company that was handling this merchandise for a large Indian cigarette manufacturer. Everybody knows who the manufacturer is. So there, what we did was we avoided or we changed the familiarity concept. Everybody knew that so and so dates this belt of the market is supplied by so and so vehicles. So we need to break a pattern. I'm talking about these events happening much before the kind of technology that we have access to today. So we've had such situations where we were able to, but then after having suffered some reverses after having suffered some losses. So that's definitely is a point that I covered, if you recall, that you need to break patterns. You cannot have the same set of crew doing the same routine activity days end, or you can't keep using the same. Of course, there are some situations where you don't have a choice. Like if I have to go from, let's say, Bombay to Delhi, there's one given route primarily. So I may have some small deviations. Yes, take those small deviations, it's still okay, but break a pattern. Don't create a pattern. That's one thing which is very important. And of course, there is a question that Shonik has come up with: insurance. So, insurance basically, Shonik, for anything is just a safety net. Should something go wrong, you don't suffer an economic loss or a financial loss of it. So, insurance is there. But insurance companies also will only honor your claims if you have taken all possible risk mitigation steps, meaning you have done due diligence of the people who you recruit, you have established the credibility of the service providers that you use, that you allow to be used for your shipments, then what kind of safety and security measures that each of these stakeholders have on offer for you. So these are various considerations that would be taken into account when an insurance company settles a claim. But then that's an aftermath. That's just like, it's the result of a post-mortem. It's the outcome of a post-mortem. So financial loss is one thing, but here your go-to market speed is lost. If you lose a merchandise, if your shipment is lost, you're not able to reach the market at your intended time. So there is an opportunity loss for you. Somebody else may come in. Maybe your competitor has had no presence in a market where you were dominant, and suddenly, because of such shipment loss issues, you are not able to reach your produce to the market, and then your competitor has already put his products there. So that opportunity loss is going to be much bigger, because it's not going to be only that particular loss. It over a period of time manifests into greater loss. You've allowed a competitor in your territory now. You had 100%. Over a period of time, you'll come down to maybe 60-70%, depending upon how efficient your competitors marketing and product strengths are. So insurance, yes, one needs to have an insurance. There is no doubt about it. It's like our life insurance or health insurance. I take a life insurance not hoping that I will die. I will die, but then I don't hope to die. So I'll still take an insurance, so that in the event of that hope being belied, my dependents are taken care of. Life health insurance, I don't want to fall sick, but then I take the cover. Why? In the event I fall sick, I need something. So it's only a backup. It's only a safety net, not really a measure to stop anything happening to your shipments. You want to say something on that, Samyak?
Yeah, I think pretty much what you said. Insurance is always, as a backup, as a safety net that can work, mostly to cover your financial losses. But need to understand there are a lot of intangible losses associated to it when it comes to what you've already mentioned. As in terms of a business impact of the overall scenario, that is something that insurance cannot cover. And just like what Parminder is asking, I had a very interesting case working for one of the logistics company when we started with the security part for them. The challenge was that a lot of people from inside would have access to when they are loading up the cargoes, they would know that what cargo is being packed in which truck and what is the destination, what are the routes that they're going to. So there were two cases where, in one case was where a lot of insider manipulation was happening, where somebody would have access to the cargo container. The cargo stops at some place, after it has taken off, it stops over at some place, and somebody with access to the container would either open the seal, replace it, take out a couple of mobile phones or laptops, a high value item, and then replace the seal with the same number. Now, there's something which started very initially when the seals were being used. The second instance was basically an insider tip, where somebody from inside the organization would pass on the information that, okay, there's a cargo moving with high value items on it. So while the cargo is en route, a couple of people would either jump onto the cargo truck from behind, or whenever it slows down, they'll just break open the seal, open the door of the cargo, take out a couple of mobile phones, laptops, because they are already aware that these are some expensive merchandise that is already going in that container. So these are some instances that happened, and it became a very regular affair on certain routes. Now, to identify that whether it's an insider hand or whether it's some external hand, which is getting onto it, becomes very difficult. So accountability, of course, becomes one part. Security becomes another. Now, this is how when I talk about a security solution, ABLOY being a part of that entire security in terms of locking helps. Uh, what we did is we started working on with a digital locking mechanism wherein the access to the lock itself can be remotely controlled and monitored by an administrator sitting at anywhere, irrespective of whether the cargo is traveling from to a certain route, or where the administrator is sitting. So that is something that reduced to a huge extent the insider hand, where nobody had a free access to the cargo, where nobody would have seal with a similar number and they can just replace the seal, open the door, take the seal off, replace it with a similar number of a similar seal with a similar number, so that it's not identifiable. So we reduced a lot on that side. On the physical security side also, since being a proper locking mechanism, this is something that cannot be broken or cut down while the vehicle is en route, or it just it's robust enough to withstand that kind of an attack. So that this is something that took care for the security challenge coming largely from the identification and monitoring purpose, and the other being the physical security challenge of it. So an ABLOY log that ways helps in both these things. But yes, of course, we also need to have an entire uh, uh, data coming back to us as to who has accessed the log, which time it has been accessed. So all the audit trail also gets captured in the event that somebody has tried to access or open the lock or a cargo container without an say authorization, or without the rights being given to them to access. So of course, in terms of technology, all of these things help. This is where ABLOY comes into picture, and we just uh, go to the next level of security, which ideally is not something which is available pretty commonly in the market. The market that we see that is still doing with a lot of seals and different types of sealing mechanism or locking mechanism. But yes, ABLOY that ways in terms of physical security is very secure. In terms of digital security, when we talk about, we work on a completely encrypted module, so there's no cyber threats that are available with an ABLOY solution. But yes, again, coming back to the point that this is just one part of the solution that we deploy. Apart from this, there is an absolute necessity to have regulations in place. There's an absolute necessity to have SOPs defined. Break the pattern, as Mr. Neelakanta said, is very important, because for anything to be identified easily, if you have a pattern, it makes security threat that much larger. So it's much easier to understand if there's a similar pattern happening with every cargo movement, or every time a similar cargo is being transported. So yeah, I mean, coming back to that, it's important that we integrate all the different functionalities all together. We see that how efficiently we can manage it, and that is how we can also provide better security apparatus, rather than saying that any one device or any one standard solution works for everyone.
Thank you, Samyak. I think I have one last question, I suppose. Mr. Surendra Kumar, frankly, for packaging, it's a different subject matter altogether. it'll take it can take much more time than security even, and it all depends on the type of merchandise. So we can perhaps connect up offline through Logistics Insider team, and we'll be happy to share my insights into that. And I hope we've been able to do some justice to the subject today. Thank you very much for your time. Stay safe, and wish you all a very happy weekend. Thank you, Samyak.
Thank you. Thank you,
Enjoyed
Mr. Neelakanta.
hosting the
Thank you,
event with
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for joining in.
Karvi, you're on mute.
Apologies. Thank you to both the speakers. Just to conclude the event and give a reflection of what I have understood from this very insightful conversation is looking at the growth and complexity of the supply chains. Shipment security has definitely become a multifaceted approach, which is customized to each situation, and it incorporates different strategies at each level of operations of an organization. And of course, like Mr. Samyak said, technology does plays a big role in it, and it has been giving a more secure environment to our shipments. But at the same time, regardless of how many tech one deploys to ensure shipment security, vulnerabilities still persist, and it needs to be backed by SOPs, and ground level challenges are to be addressed, and regulations needs to be made. And like Mr. Neelakanta emphasized again and again, ones need to break a particular pattern. So in all, I'm sure that our audiences are taking this into account, that shipment security does not only mean relying on tech. Of course, it is playing a huge role in securing your shipment, but at the same time, you need to look at each and every aspect of your shipment. And of course, there's a safety net of insurances if, God forbid, something does happen. So thank you to Mr. Rajesh Neelakanta and Mr. Samyak Sinha for deriving such an insightful session today, and our audiences for joining in. And your questions did make this session even more thought provoking. Thank you all. Now, before I sign off, I would like to make one important announcement. Logistics Insiders has joined hands with Avert Consultancy to bring to you guys a very insightful knowledge report on the Indian express logistics industry, which will be unveiled on 31st of January. So please stay tuned for that. And now, with this, I would like to take your leave. Thank you, everyone, for joining in today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.